Today's video is one I hadn't planned on making, but I created this card and posted it on my blog this weekend, and I actually had quite a few comments and requests for a video. So I hadn't planned on doing video, but I'm going to do one because you guys loved this card more than I thought you would, and I really appreciate that. So it's got a lot of bling going on, lots of fun to make, and it's using a new bundle. The bundle is called So Many Stars, and it comes with this fabulous stamp set, and look at all these dies. Oh my goodness, just awesome. I love star dies. And so these are all in our new Stampin' Up! Holiday Catalog 2019-2020. So this was the first card I've made using this bundle, and it was Sunday, and I just wanted to play and have fun with it. And this is actually my card for this month's Leaders Project Sheet group that I'm a part of. So I'm going to go ahead and recreate this for you. Now I used Night of Navy for this card, but for today's demonstration I decided to use Blueberry Bushel. You can see it's an entirely different blue, but it's so pretty I thought it would be very nice for this card design. So let's get started. So first I'm bringing in my paper trimmer, and I've got my 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock, and I'm going to score it right down the center at the 4 1/4 mark, spin it around and cut it at 5 1/2. So this is how you would get 2 card bases, and the crease is already in there, so it just saves a little extra step. Now I am going to be cutting into this piece for the top layer, but I can put a card base aside. Now the top layer measures 3 3/4 by 5, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. Now I'm cutting a piece of silver foil, and I want it to measure 5 1/4 by 4. That's almost 4. Just take off that teeny little bit. And that is for this piece. Okay, I've brought in my Bake Shot because what I like to do, especially when I'm using specialty cardstock, is I like to stretch it out as much as I can. So I usually cut out the center, and then I can use that on another card. So that's what I'm going to do, and our rectangle stitch dies work perfectly for this. All right, I've taken the second largest rectangle die, centered it onto my silver foil cardstock, and going to run that through. I'm going to glue this onto my card base, and then I still have this piece to use for another card. I can either use it as it is, or I can cut it up or use dies on it, but this is just something I like to do to get extra mileage out of my specialty papers. You could do the same thing for Whisper White paper or whatever you want, but just it's a great way to get all that you can out of your cardstock. Okay, so now I'm just taking some snail, putting it right around on the front of my card base. Okay, set that aside. Okay, so now it's time for the stamping. So I'm going to take my embossing buddy and tap it over the entire piece of 5 by 3 3/4 Blueberry Bushel cardstock. So I'm taking the largest star. We got a couple different star designs. I'm using this one right here, and ink it with the Versamark. And I'm stamping it right down in this corner. Now I'm taking my sentiment, and the sentiment reads, "Oh holy night, the stars are brightly shining." Perfect for this card. Try to stamp it straight. I'm not always good at stamping things straight. That looks pretty good. Now I'm taking this image right here, and it's got some tiny little stars in it. And you can't maybe see it on the camera. Maybe you can. But the Versamark is making it dark enough that I can see where I've already previously stamped. So I'm just going to stamp it there, and I just kind of want to make the stars go up and around the sentiment. So turning my stamp a little bit so they go in some different directions. Okay, and I am going to emboss this with white. Perfect. There's a tiny little bit of powder right there where I didn't want it, so I'm just taking a dry paintbrush and tapping off the excess. The embossing buddy really helps prevent static so that you don't get embossing powder where you don't want it. And I'm gonna zap that with the heat tool. Okay, that's fully embossed. You really want to make sure that you kind of turn your paper back and forth in different directions so that you can see if there's any powder that hasn't been embossed. Next step, I'm taking that same image and I want to stamp just a little bit off on the side and a little bit over here because I want to pull in a little bit of my silver embossing powder. So I'm going right off the edges. Now I'm taking the tiniest star image in this stamp set and I'm going to stamp that randomly and just kind of fill in the gaps here and there. That should be good. Now this time I'm going to emboss with silver. This looks so pretty with the silver and the white. Okay, while I have all my embossing paraphernalia out, I'm going back into my stamping using this little row of stars. And this piece of Blueberry Bushel that I trimmed from our cardstock originally is going to be my scrap paper. I won't need all of it, so I can still use it for other cards, of course. Taking that stamp and stamp this once. If your photopolymer stamps ever get dirty and they're not sticking, like I can see I've got embossing buddy powder on there, just rinse them. I put them in a colander and then rinse them underneath the tap and then put them to dry and then put them back on. So I will go back and clean that. Okay, going in with my white powder now. I heat emboss those. In our die collection here, there's this swirly die, and the stars in this die actually line up on the stamp stars. Let's see, just like that. So they line up perfectly. And all I do is I just kind of make sure the center of each star I can see through these little openings. So that's how I know I've got them lined up pretty well. So I'm going to run that through the Big Shot. I'm just going to brush out all those little bits and pieces in the middle. And I have my little stars. And of course you can save this piece for another card or a tag. So I'm going to set that aside. And it's these 5 stars actually that I want to keep. So now I'm taking this little star and I'm going to cut out a piece of this silver glimmer paper with this die. So there's my little glimmer star. So all my embossing and die cutting is done. Okay, next I'm taking my Craft Whisper White ink. Now I'm going to use my finger for this little bit, but if you would prefer not getting ink on your finger, you can use a little sponge dauber, but I'm just using my finger. And I am just going to do a little swirly motion over my silver stars. This gives it a real nice effect, almost like light behind the stars, which is cool. So now I'm going on top of my bigger star, just rubbing in that white. This reminds me of the chalkboard technique, which is really fun as well. And then I'm just going to do a little bit here and there. Add a bit more up here. Okay, I've just washed my hands and the ink comes off pretty darn good. Now I've got a piece of paper towel and I'm going to lightly mist it with water. This is also a form of emboss resist, and I'm just lightly wiping over top where I've rubbed that white. So if there's any white ink sitting on those silver stars, it comes right off. Okay, so now it looks like you've got some light behind all your pretty stars. So now it's time to add a whole bunch of sparkle to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my clear Wink of Stella and I'm just going to swipe across the sentiment, just going in straight lines. Next, I'm going to outline the big star. So that is really adding a lot of sparkle, but we have more sparkle yet. In our new holiday catalog, we have these snowflake sequins, and they're just so much fun. There's little snowflakes, there's stars, there's little circles. I'm going to use the stars and the circles on this card. So I'm taking my fine tip glue, and I'm just going to add just a few random dots here and there so I can add some of these little stars. So I'm just using the take your pick tool with the little sticky bit here, and I'm going to pick up some stars and just start randomly placing them onto those glue dots. Okay, now I'm going to move into my circles, and there's our little translucent ones in silver. I'm just going to use the translucent circles. So those sequins really make a difference. So pretty. Now I want to add a little stream of glitter going through those stars. So I'm taking my fine tip glue and I'm just going to draw a line. You know what? I'm going to do a little bit down here as well. Now I'm taking our ice Stampin' Glitter, sprinkle that on that glue. And I'm actually going to go ahead and put a little dazzling diamond glitter on there too, which is not as coarse as that new ice Stampin' Glitter. So any little bits of wet glue that are still on there, this glitter will fill that in. There is a lot of glitter going on this card. I would not be mass producing this card. This card would be for somebody very special, but it's really fun to have a play with everything that we have in our product line that glitters and shimmers. All right, time to add our die cut stars. So I'm taking a glue dot and putting it right in the center of the big star, and then my star that I cut out with the silver glimmer paper, I'm putting that on, and there's actually a line that directs to the center, and that's what I'm lining up the tips of my star with. So you can see that these, turn it this way, these points actually line up with these lines. So it looks really good. So now I'm taking my mini Stampin' Dimensionals, and because the little stars that I've cut are pretty small, I'm going to be cutting these into little bits. On this card I actually used a bigger star down in the corner. So I didn't do that on this one. That's okay. If you've been watching my video tutorials for a while, you know I'm in love with our Champagne Shimmer Mist. And what I do is I take an empty bottle and I put in 70% rubbing alcohol that I get at the dollar store, and I add a few drops of the Champagne Shimmer Mist. Then I shake it and just spritz it on some scrap dark cardstock. And when you get the amount of shimmery that you want, perfect. If it's not shimmery enough, add a few more drops of the Champagne Shimmer Mist. So now I'm just going to spritz just this. The rubbing alcohol dries pretty fast. So look at all that extra sparkle. Holy moly. I told you this is a very sparkly card. The stars are indeed brightly shining on this card. It's time to bring our card base back in. I'm just going to take my snail adhesive, put it in the center. You want to make sure you have enough adhesive that your cards don't fall apart. Open this up and then position that right on top. And you know, there's not enough bling on there, is there? So let's bring in the rhinestones. So I'm taking the largest of rhinestones and putting it right in the center here. And then I'm going down to the medium size. Put it in this star. And then I'm going to use the smaller diamonds in the other 3 stars. That, you guys. If you're not big on sparkle and shimmer and glimmer, this is not the card for you. But if you do like that sort of thing, I think you're going to be digging this card. There's a lot happening there. So much fun. Now, you would think that that's it for all the shimmer and sparkle, but no, there's one more thing I'm going to do. The Stampin' Up! Has brought back our crystal effects, but this time they are shimmery. This is in our new holiday catalog, and there are sparkles in the crystal effects. So, I am going to fill in the bake star with my crystal effects. So first thing I'm going to do is gently squeeze it and draw the outline of my star, and then I'm going to go back in and fill it in, and then you have to set this aside to dry. You could technically just leave it like that with the outline, and that will dry clear with the extra shimmer, but I'm going to go ahead now and fill it in and just work my way around the inner star. As I'm squeezing, I'm moving the tip around so that I can spread that crystal effects in the center. So my star is filled in. I'm just cleaning the tip with a piece of paper towel. So that is still wet, so I'm going to set it aside and let it dry. Alright, so while this card has been sitting aside to dry, I stamped on Whisper White cardstock the sentiment for inside the card, stamped it with my Blueberry Bushel, and then I embossed Merry Christmas. And the Merry Christmas is from the Christmas Gleaming stamp set. Snow Many Stars has Season's Greetings, which is nice, but I actually prefer Merry Christmas. So I embossed that in silver. So now I've just put some snail adhesive behind this layer. I'm going to tuck that inside the card, and this card is done. This crystal effects will take a few hours to dry, so it's just a little bit tacky. It's been maybe about an hour since I put that on, but this card is really stunning and so sparkly and so pretty. I'll show you again what it looks like on the Night of Navy. This is the first one that I did. A little bit different, as I mentioned earlier, with the bigger star, which I didn't use on this one. So I'll be honest, I actually thought I would prefer this card with the Night of Navy, but now that I've made it with the Blueberry Bushel, I like this color better. I just find it brighter. I really love it, but they're both super pretty. I hope you enjoyed today's video tutorial. I hadn't planned on doing a video for this card, but with all the wonderful kind comments I received when I posted it on my blog yesterday, I was happy to do a video tutorial to share how I put it together. Thank you for watching. Please remember to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I appreciate you. Happy stamping.